India is not the sole upstream country as far as the water flowing to the Indus River. China is the real upstream country, and China, in my best judgment, if you keep doing that, there will be consequences. What if China may need to step in?
पानी बंद करेगा इंशाअल्लाह हम तेरी सांस बंद करेंगे इन दरियाओं में फिर खून बहेगा
तुम हमारा पानी बंद कर दोगे हम तुम्हारा सांस बंद कर देंगे
It is said that the next war is going to be over water. Not just weaponizing water, but mostly the lack of it. 3 nuclear powers, 2 major river systems, 1 region on the brink. The water disputes between India, Pakistan and China aren't just about treaties anymore. They're about survival. From the snowcaps of the Himalayas to the fertile plains of Punjab, the fight for flowing river has become a new front in South Asia's simmering rivalry. And with climate change, melting glaciers and warping rainfall, could South Asia's next great conflict erupt over water? Today is Environment Day, and we discuss how water has become the biggest issue when it comes to global politics and regional rifts. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The Indus Waters Treaty once stood as a rare success story between India and Pakistan, allocating life-giving rivers in a region riddled with mistrust. China, upstream and strategic, watches closely from the heights of Tibet. But after the Pahalgam terror attack in April 2025, India has kept in abeyance the treaty, threatening to choke Pakistan's water supply. Now, Pakistan warns of Chinese retaliation on the Brahmaputra. In this triangle of tension, who really controls the tap? When India and Pakistan signed the Indus Waters Treaty in 1960, it was hailed as a diplomatic triumph. Brokered by the World Bank, the agreement divided the Indus River system. India kept the eastern rivers of Ravi, Beas and Satluj, while Pakistan got the western ones, that is Indus, Chenab and Jhelum. India had limited rights to the western rivers for hydropower and irrigation, but was required not to disrupt their flow. For over 6 decades, this treaty survived wars, skirmishes, and nuclear crises. But it may not survive climate change. The turning point came in April 2025. After the Pahalgam terror attack, the Indus Waters Treaty was placed in abeyance. Effectively, India signaled it could now restrict the flow of water to Pakistan. This was no ordinary retaliation. This was an existential threat.
In the briefing to the CCS, the cross-border linkages of the terrorist attack were brought out. It was noted that this attack came in the wake of the successful holding of the elections in the Union Territory and its steady progress towards economic growth and development. Recognizing the seriousness of this terrorist attack, the CCS decided upon the following measures. 1. The Indus Waters Treaty of 1960 will be held in abeyance with immediate effect until Pakistan credibly and irrevocably abjures its support for cross-border terrorism. 2. The integrated checkpost Atari will be closed with immediate effect. Those who have crossed over with valid endorsements may return through that route before 1 May 2025. 3. Pakistani nationals will not be permitted to travel to India under the SAARC visa exemption scheme visas. Any SVAS visas issued in the past to Pakistani nationals are deemed cancelled. Any Pakistani national currently in India under SVES visa has 48 hours to leave India. 4. The Defence, Military, Naval and Air Advisors in the Pakistani High Commission in New Delhi are declared persona non grata. They have a week to leave India.
Pakistan, whose agriculture and population depend heavily on the Indus Basin, accused India of weaponizing water. It warned that cutting off rivers would devastate its 240 million people. From Islamabad's perspective, water is not a resource, it is survival. But India has stood firm, citing Pakistan's obstruction of Indian infrastructure, interference in projects like the Tulbul Navigation Project, and a long history of cross-border terrorism. Suddenly, a river dispute became a national security crisis. But this isn't just about politics, it's about climate. It's about climate change. The Indus Basin, like many river systems in South Asia, depends on snow and glacial melt from the Himalayas, glaciers that are now vanishing. Climate scientists report that Himalayan glaciers are shrinking at alarming rates, with Tibet warming by 0.3 degrees Celsius per decade. Some projections say the glaciers feeding these rivers could disappear by 2035. So in less than a century, water wars would transform from a diplomatic chess game into a humanitarian catastrophe. Meanwhile, Pakistan's response went beyond rhetoric. It looked east to China. Senior aide Rana Ehsan Afzal warned that if India stopped the Indus waters, China could retaliate by halting the Brahmaputra's flow into India. Tit for tat, river for river. China's position here is critical. The Brahmaputra originates in Tibet and flows into India's northeast before entering Bangladesh. China sitting upstream holds potential leverage, but not total control. Indian officials like Assam's Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma were quick to respond, saying only 30 to 35% of the river's flow comes from China. The bulk, 65 to 70%, comes from Indian rainfall and tributaries. Still, perception matters as much as hydrology, and perceptions are darkening. China is actively investing in Pakistan's water infrastructure, including projects like the Mohmand hydropower dam. These moves are seen as strategic, allowing China to extend its water influence into Pakistan and, by extension, pressure India from two fronts.
Well, a couple of points. One is that China will never do what India is doing against the people in Pakistan, try to deny water in the Indus River to the people in the downstream in Pakistan. Now, I understand between India and Pakistan, there was a water treaty involving the waters in the Indus River. Now, despite of the commitments by the Indian government is still threatening and also actually doing the diversion of the water. Now, this to me is a very serious problem. Now, for the three countries, China, India, and Pakistan, and as far as Pakistan is concerned, it mostly involved the water in the Indus River in the west. But between China and India, we actually share the same rivers, both in the west as well as in the east, mostly Brahmaputra, as you call it, and Yaluzhanbujang, as we call it, in China. I think either between China and India or between India and Pakistan, and because China is on the upper stream for the Indus River, we need to really talk it out rather than see the very tragic situation involving denying water in the Indus River to the people in the downstream in Pakistan. Because in China, we have a saying, thousands of years old, don't do unto others what you do not want others do unto you. China is on the upper stream. That's a reality. And I do not want to see India in the midstream doing funny things against the people in Pakistan on the downstream. And peaceful cooperation will be absolutely necessary between China and India and between India and Pakistan as far as water in these mighty rivers is concerned. You are raising a hypothetical question. I think China-Pakistani friendship is ironclad, and China will not allow any violation of Pakistan's legitimate interest in defending its sovereignty and territorial integrity, including peaceful use of the water in the Indus River, especially because of the treaty between India and Pakistan about the allocation of the water in the Indus River. That's number one. Number two is that between China and India, we share the same river, and China is on the upper stream, India is on the downstream, both in the western part as well as in the eastern part. I hope we will figure out a way to peacefully allocate water in these mighty rivers, rather than being subjected to the specter of having water being diverted or being denied to the people in the midstream or in the downstream. It is sufficient for me to emphasize one again: don't do unto others what you do not want others do unto you. That's very important, especially because India is not really in the upper stream. India is, generally speaking, in the midstream of these mighty rivers. So don't try to do things to the people in the downstream, because you never know what will be done to you.
Chinese media portray these actions as stabilizing efforts. Indian analysts view them as tightening encirclement. The optics are clear. China and Pakistan are building a water axis, and climate chaos is the accelerant. Because as rivers shrink and rainfall becomes erratic, desperation sets in. South Asia's water cycle is unraveling. Glacial melt now floods rivers during the wrong seasons. Monsoons no longer arrive on time. When they do, they're either too weak or too violent. What used to fall as snow now falls as rain in the Himalayas, disrupting the storage capacity of the natural water towers. The result: erratic floods followed by brutal droughts. This is no longer hypothetical. India's suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty occurred amid growing infrastructure pressure, dam overhauls, new canals, and water diversion projects. Pakistan says these moves threaten its agriculture. India says it's finally using water it has a right to. But both countries are chasing the same shrinking pie.
As per the UN, conventions, local people have lots of rights. First of all, you have to respect nature, and it has to be culturally sensitive and economically beneficial to the local people. And at the moment, exploitation of all these minerals, with the help of, by the way, Western companies, though, most of the know-how and machines are used and invested by Western companies with the Chinese government and Chinese companies. They disregard the UN Convention on water sharing. Tibetans don't benefit. For example, lithium is exploited, and it's a very complicated, polluting kind of process, because you have to extract lithium using hot water and separate, right? And then it pollutes the soil and water, and lots of fishes die, right? And then also the air. The Chinese government is exploiting lithium. 75% of lithium reserve of China is in Tibet. So Mr. Gao should respond to this issue that you are exploiting Tibetan lithium.
And who benefits out of it?
Chinese companies and the investors.
Not Tibetans at all.
In fact, there is a photograph of people protesting because their rivers were getting polluted. A lot of fish were dying in Tao region. They came out and protested. Despite all the protests, Chinese government is disregarding it
and
continuing to generate power for their benefit, right? So they are doing it in utter disregard. So hence, Mr. Gao and the Chinese government has lesser credibility and legitimacy to speak about Tibetan water and critical mineral resources of Tibet.
Climate change has fundamentally altered the equation the treaty was based on. When the Indus Waters Treaty was signed in the 1960s, glaciers were stable, rainfall was predictable, and the monsoon followed patterns. Today, none of that holds true. Yet, both countries cling to outdated legal frameworks in a transformed environment. And there is India that has been seeking a revision of that legal framework. And then there's China, the wild card. Beijing has not signed any binding water-sharing treaty with India or downstream nations. It does not have to share hydrological data unless there is a bilateral agreement between two countries. Its dam building spree on the upper reaches of the Brahmaputra has caused anxiety across the region. Downstream communities in India and Bangladesh fear that sudden releases or diversions could flood their fields or dry their rivers at China's discretion. In Bangladesh, the effects are already visible. Monsoon floods of the Brahmaputra, exacerbated by upstream releases, displace thousands. In the dry season, the river shrinks, causing water stress in agriculture and sanitation. Bangladesh is the silent victim in this trilateral drama, but no one is immune. Globally, climate change is driving water into the center of conflict. From Burkina Faso to Syria, water infrastructure has become a target. In South Africa, Day Zero scenarios led to riots and social unrest. But South Asia's vulnerability is amplified by its population density, dependency on agriculture, and nuclear backdrop. In a worst-case scenario, a minor disruption in river flow, whether accidental or intentional, could ignite a regional conflict. A failed crop season in Pakistan, a flood in Assam, a dam breach in Tibet, each could serve as a spark. That's what makes climate change such a dangerous force multiplier. It destabilizes the very foundation of cooperation. Treaties become outdated, hydrology becomes unpredictable, and in the absence of mutual trust, every flood looks like sabotage, and every drought feels like an attack. The numbers are terrifying. Today, 4 billion people face water stress. Climate models project that number could nearly double by century's end under high warming scenarios. Rivers will dry, aquifers will sink, and conflicts will rise, especially in regions already haunted by history. But this doesn't have to be inevitable. India, Pakistan, and China need a new era of water diplomacy, one that isn't rooted in mid-20th century politics, but in 21st century climate realities. That means more real-time data sharing, flexible treaty mechanisms, joint infrastructure, transparent hydropower planning, and above all, trust. Because without that, adaptation will fail. Old treaties like the Indus Waters Treaty or informal Brahmaputra arrangements cannot handle today's climate shocks. South Asia's governments must reform, renegotiate, or replace them with flexible, adaptive models. The alternative is a region where rivers don't bring life, they bring war. And war over water is war over everything: food, energy, health, and stability. Already, infrastructure projects across South Asia are struggling to keep up with demand. Leaky irrigation systems, outdated canals, poor flood control mechanisms, none of these were built for the new climate reality. Investment in smart water systems is urgent, yet that requires cooperation, not conflict, certainly not terrorism. Even within countries, governance matters. Water scarcity is as much a political issue as it is hydrological. Urbanization, mismanagement, and inequality exacerbate the problem. Climate change just pours fuel on that fire. So here we are, 3 nuclear powers, 1 melting mountain chain, and rivers that no longer follow rules. The clock is ticking, not just on diplomacy, but also on nature itself. If India, Pakistan continue to weaponize water, if China continues its opaque infrastructure spree, and if the region continues to ignore climate signals, the consequences would be irreversible. Not just failed treaties, but failed states, particularly a reminder to Pakistan that continues to harbor terrorists. But there's still time, still water under the bridge, literally and figuratively. If South Asia can treat climate change as a shared threat, not a strategic opportunity, the rivers can be restored to their rightful place, not as weapons, but as lifelines. Because the rivers may be political boundaries, but the rain doesn't care. The glaciers don't care. Climate doesn't care. Only cooperation can stop the region from drying out or drowning. Thank you for watching Statecraft.